Hello there, it's Toby Jones and welcome back to a new video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about my 10 Desert Island albums. Now, I don't think Desert Island discs or Desert Island albums is really a new concept to anybody, but if it is, or if you're unsure what we're about to do, I'll explain. Basically, you take the concept that you are stuck on a desert island. Which albums do you take with you? That is what it is in a nutshell. Now, I've seen this done with 5, and I think the Desert Island discs show that obviously this really originated from in the UK. I think it's on BBC Radio. Never actually listened to it, but I know it's quite a famous show. And I think that's 5 tracks. So I think it's 5 tracks, not albums, but if you're putting it into albums, it's usually 5 albums. Well, I kind of cheated and have gone with 10 because there was no way I could have picked 5, nor would it have been as exciting to pick 5 because I found that pretty quickly in my search of this, I'd pretty much pick 5 straight away, at least a top 3 or 4 straight away. And that 5 didn't really give me the range that I was satisfied with. And I'll talk about that a little bit. And ultimately, why I decided to do this. And the reason I decided to do this, and now we're going to a bit of a story, so bear with me. You will notice that it's very sunny outside. The fan is on, so if there's some slight flickering in the picture, I apologise. It's very warm here in the UK, and that is something that doesn't normally happen. It's warm to the point that it's very warm inside the house, unpleasant, and cut a long story short, I suffer with headaches with the heat and all the rest of it, and I wasn't very well last evening, went to bed early, so I woke up about 5:30 this morning. One of the good things with the nice weather is that early in the morning you can go and sit. We've got a patio and a table. I went and sat on the patio. Took the iPod with me, which I treasure, my iPod Classic, and really in this concept, maybe I could just take my iPod Classic with me. But is that much fun? No, because you can get about 30,000 songs on that. So there'll be no shortening down of the list. And I was sat there just thinking about life and things in general, and inevitably negative things can get in, and I thought, I wonder, and I've pondered this idea before in my head, of the albums I'd take to a desert island, but there's that much that starts floating around your head. I had to write it out on paper, which is something, to be honest, I very rarely do. I very rarely use paper. I've got a notepad I use at work, but apart from that necessity, everything's either on my phone or on a computer typed up. So I gave myself the length of this page, separated by 2 lines at a time, and I didn't work it out before. I knew it would give me at least 10 options. It wasn't predetermined, and that gave me, I believe, just counting here, 16 options. So I did 16 albums, got to the end, and that was it. And that was the choices. Obviously, I had to then shorten that down by 6 albums. This does include compilations and live albums, which, yes, a live album is effectively a compilation, I suppose. I know that would not offend people, but I know that some people would see that as a bit of a cop-out because ultimately it doesn't show what the best albums are for each artist or the essential ones. So what I've done in each case, I've selected a compilation or a live album. I've selected a studio substitute for anybody who might think that that's against the rules. But we're going to get straight into it. So my logic for this, and you'll see this throughout, is some people are into one genre of music, and that's great. So some people, heavy metal, and that's it. Some people, rap, and that's it. Some people, northern soul, and that's it. I'm into probably one type of music, but probably 3 different types of music if you put it all together. Sometimes I like the heavy stuff, sometimes I like the middle of the road stuff, and sometimes I like the soft stuff. And that is something you've got to think about if you're stuck on a desert island. Whether it's in life, stuck on a desert island, whatever concept you take, you need a range of music, I think anyway. So I tried to pick a range of the heavy stuff, which would satisfy one mood, the soft stuff, the kind of ballady stuff, and then maybe kind of middle of the road stuff and prog in the middle. So we'll see how this works out. Now, 1 to 3 was easy. And though these are 3 that I would definitely take. So even if this was 1 to 5, those would be there. Anybody who's followed the channel for a while will know that Pink Floyd The Wall is my favourite album of all time. Now, the other thing that I can take 10 is I've got 9 out of 10 of these on CD. So they're a lot more portable than vinyl, you see. So that's one thing that goes for me. This also, it's important to note, isn't actually a list of my top 10 favourite albums. Because of that whole thing that you've got to switch it up with different genres for me. But this is my favourite album of all time. I know it's a maligned album by some. It's an album that's very much Marmite. It's very much you love it or you hate it. I loved it from the first time I heard it. So Pink Floyd to the wall. It's around an hour and 25 minutes. That would keep me more than entertained. And if I had the room, I'd take the immersion edition because I'd got the live album in, but that's cheating, so we won't do that. Second up is indeed a live album, and just for the case of room on my desk, I haven't bought the studio substitutes along with me. I'm very sorry. But this is actually the only vinyl in the list. But by the time I got stuck on the desert island, hopefully I'd have this on CD. Another one of my favourite artists, Neil Diamond's Hot August Nights. Again, another live double album. And a little bit like a greatest hits set, that's the whole idea. Showcases the best tracks of this period. And something I actually did mean to do is because of the whole Desert Island discs in terms of the songs idea, I thought I'd bring a track for each album. So for this, if I was to take one track, it'd be Comfortably Numb. That's fairly obvious. With this album, it would be Morningside from side number 4. Such an emotional, evocative song, and basically about an old man who dies alone. And that thing of whether he had children or not, because the song says his children didn't take it, basically. And makes you think, well, did he have children or not? And that's left down to the listener's interpretation. But fantastic, thoughtful music. And that's where, as much as some people might scoff, is where these two have got a bit of a link. These are more thoughtful albums, whereas the next two that are about to come up are just heavy and hard-hitting. So that's the only vinyl on the list, so I'm going to put that down on the floor. The rest I've got on CD next to me. Number 3, one of my 3 favourite bands, Pink Floyd, AC/DC, Thin Lizzy. Pink Floyd and Thin Lizzy are in the list. Will AC/DC be? Let's see. Number 3 is probably considered by a lot of people to be one of, if not the best, rock live albums of all time. And something I haven't done, I'm going to quickly. For Neil Diamond, if I was to take a studio substitute, it would be either Melody Road on CD, which is his latest album from 2014. Again, a very mellow release, a very soft release, a honeymoon release, because it was his first album he released after his first studio album of original stuff, because Dreams came out in 2010, but his first studio album released of original songs since 2008, so it's seen as more of a lovey-dovey album, but all the same, you've got to cover all these genres. So I would either take that on the CD front or Beautiful Noise on an LP from 1976. That's probably his most well-rounded album. So, back to Thin Lizzy. Slight genre change. Live and Dangerous, and getting the song out of the way first, It's Still in Love with You, because that is an absolutely ultimate performance. And bearing in mind, we've kind of covered the soft, thoughtful, gentle, balladry here, and obviously, well, you could say the hard-hitting Comfortably Numb, but absolutely ultimate, essential. This is for more qualified people than me will tell you this is an excellent live album. Whether it's in the studio or not, who cares? Starting with the excellent Jailbreak, going through a lot of the material really from the Jailbreak, Johnny the Fox, Bad Reputation period, and that's really the best part of Thin Lizzy's catalogue for most people. I would pick this, but if I was forced to pick one of these studio albums, it would be either Johnny the Fox or Black Rose. I can't distinguish between the two. I can't differentiate between the two. It's too difficult. Number 4 is a straight-laced studio album, and this is where the heavy rock comes in. And this is where I'm going to introduce the first album that missed out on the list. So, to name number 4 first, and then I'll let you know what missed out. And I haven't brought that along here because I only got that on vinyl, and that is Judas Priest's Stained Class. Now, up to yet, and including Stained Class, these are 4 of my favourite albums of all time. This is the best Judas Priest album, closely followed by Sin After Sin, but this has got the killer Beyond the Realms of Death, which is my favourite Judas Priest track. If you listen to that with headphones, full blast, it is an absolute delight. Might be a row to some people, but an absolute delight for me all the same. This is what got Exciter, which is really a precursor to speed metal. The title track, Stained Class, is excellent. Even the cover I like, Better By You, Better Than Me. White Heat, Red Hot. Invader, meh. Saints in Hell, Savage, awesome. Hero's End, not too fussed about, but I couldn't do without Beyond the Realms of Death. So that's the obvious track choice from this album. And the album that missed out to allow this to get in the list was Overkill by Motorhead. I wanted to try and get a Motorhead album in there. There's not much between Overkill, Bomber, Ace of Spades, and obviously the live album No Sleep Till Hammersmith. But I picked Overkill. No real reason why in particular, Maybe it's got a bit more of a raw sound than the other two, so it kind of ticks off the box of that heavy rock, heavy metal sort of aspect. But I took Stained Class just because I had to. It's a better album than Overkill for me, and I couldn't leave Beyond the Realms of Death behind. It pains me, but I could probably leave the title track of the Overkill album behind. Again, you can only take 10 albums, so you can't take everything. Number 5 in this list definitely covers the soft balladry point of view. Now, as John Bonham said, the best drummer of all time, Karen Carpenter. So I am going to take Carpenter's Gold. Greatest Hits album. This packs in 20 tracks, all of which are sublime. Even the expanded version of this 4040, which came out a couple of years later, pretty much all of it is excellent. Carpenters, one of my favourite groups. Obviously, Karen on the vocals is brilliant. The instrumentation and the arrangements are just absolutely marvellous. They are very much seen by some as just an easy listening group and not much of a... what's the word? Not educational, but... I can't think of the word now. I've gone blank. It'll come. But academic, that sort of... I can't think of the word, but it'll come to me later. Not that sort of group, but songs... I mean, I was going to say Superstar is what I'd pick, but my actual favourite is Goodbye to Love with that guitar solo. I'm going to take Superstar purely because I've got Comfortably Numb, Beyond the Realms of Death, all of which are kind of epics. And Superstar is an epic, but not to the point of Goodbye to Love, so I'll take that. But again, this is just a fantastic album. There's even a bonus DVD, so if we have a projector on the desert island, we can see Karen and Richard in action. There you go, number 5. Number 6, covering that sort of middle-of-the-road aspect. And this is a new discovery, really, from the last 7 or 8 months. That's Chris Rea. And it's between 2 albums, but as much as I like to be contrarian, this is probably his best. And that is The Road to Hell. From this, I would take the title track, but I would be so gracious if the gods let me take part 1 and part 2, because that is tracks 1 and 2 off this CD. But I'd like to take tracks 1 and 2. Track 2, if I had to, because that's the start of the real song, I suppose. The part 1's a bit of an introduction to it all. But all the same, I'd like to take part 1 and 2. This also has an additional recording second disc, so if I was allowed to take that, bonus, double the money. But this is the best Chris Rea album as a whole. Auberge, I really like Auberge as well, but track for track, this is probably better. You Must Be Evil is brilliant. Texas and Daytona kind of give that sort of soft balladry, gentler thing over, but not to the extent of Auberge, which is a little bit too gentle at times. Tell Me There's a Heaven does that as well. Looking for a Rainbow, you've got Your Warm and Tender Love. That's what they always say, and I Just Want to Be With You. Throwing a bit of funk and soul into it. So that's something that hasn't come from this compilation of albums yet. So that's something that is definitely worth having. And as I said, The Road to Hell Part 1 and 2 from this album. And following on that kind of funky feel is a group that I have just finished Martin Popov's book on, Sensitive to Light. The Rainbow Story. But not the album you might think. It's Rainbow, Down to Earth. And this is an album that has really gone up in my estimations the last couple of years, because for me it's always been Rising's at the top, don't care about the whole album, A Light in the Black, Stargazer, and it pains me not to take those tracks. But as a well-rounded effort, this is leagues above that, because you've got to think on Rising you've got Run with the Wolf, Starstruck and Do You Close Your Eyes, all of which are competent tracks, but Turret Woman is brilliant as well, obviously, but weaker tracks. I don't think there's anything this week on this album. The title track, not the title track, sorry, but the first track, All Night Long, is great. Eyes of the World is kind of a cool proggy build-up. I can do that No Time to Lose, but Lost in Hollywood is the track I would pick from this album. Absolutely tremendous guitar solo. You just naturally, I think, pick the epics from each album. It's natural to do that. Danger Zone is a good groovy track. No Time to Lose, even though I said I would probably do without it, it's got that bit of a poppy feel. bit of a good mood feel, which albums like Pink Floyd's The Wall don't exactly have a jolly feel, and in fact, this is quite negative in terms of social commentary, so it wouldn't have that either. Since You've Been Gone, Love's No Friend is more of a ballad, but again, another great track all the same. So I'm going to take Down to Earth for Rainbow. As I say, I'd kind of got that rock aspect covered in other areas, so that kind of left out Long Live Rock and Roll, which is more of a hard rocking album. Difficult to Cure is a bit too up and down, a bit too variable for me, and I don't know the last two albums enough to warrant them in this list. Okay, number 8, so we're moving through them quite quickly. Number 8 is the only country or folk, I suppose you could say, entry in this list, and country has been a big part of my young life. As I say, I'm into rock music in the main, but country was a big part of my childhood. My grandparents very much brought me up on Johnny Cash, Charlie Pride, Marty Robbins, Kenny Rogers, Frankie Lane. I think if I said Frankie Lane, possibly. But one of the ones they didn't particularly bring me up on, but is more of a recent discovery thanks to the world of charity shop vinyl, is Glen Campbell. And you're going to go, eh? What? But Wichita Lineman is one of the best tracks of all time, written by the brilliant Wordsmith, Jimmy Webb, and he's collaborated with Glen Campbell on a number of times. By the time I get to Phoenix, and I think he wrote Galveston as well. I could be wrong, but I think he wrote Galveston. This is another great album, particularly the first half. So you've got Rhinestone Cowboy, both sides now, probably leave that one. By the time I get to Phoenix, he's excellent. Gentle on My Mind, Too Many Mornings, One Last Time, Don't Pull Your Love, Then You Can Tell Me Goodbye, Reason to Believe, and It's Only Make Believe. That is awesome. That track in particular has got some kind of a Roy Orbison feel to it. Almost a bit of a It's Over feel to it. It's Only Make Believe. Really like Dreams of the Everyday Housewife, Where's the Playground Susie, You Got Your Feet in LA, Country Boy, and All I Have to Do Is Dream with Bobby Gentry, because apart from Karen Carpenter, that is the first female vocal we're going to hear on the desert island. And it does pain me to say a little bit that I don't listen to female vocalists enough. I do listen to primarily male vocalists, but that's just the nature of the music, I guess, I listen to. But that is something we do want, a bit of diversity. And that's going to come again with a more proggy release at number 9, and then some hard-hitting rock to finish us off. So, at the moment, just to run down what we've got at number 8. So we've got The Wall at number 1, so that's more of a proggy release. Neil Diamond's Hot August Night at 2, a bit more of a softer release. Finley's is Live and Dangerous, and Stay in Class, they're more rock hard-hitting stuff. Carpenter's Gold for that more soft and gentle touch. Chris Rea, Middle of the Road. Rainbow, Down to Earth, a bit rocky, bit middle of the road, and a bit poppy at the same time. And then Glen Campbell's 20 Golden Greats at number 8. Number 9 is my favourite Queen album, and that is Queen 2. Queen 2 featuring a lot of the group's early day megas, brilliant tracks: Ogre Battle, March of the Black Queen, Father to Son, White Queen As It Began. It's the most intellectual, that's the word I was thinking of earlier. It's the most intellectual Queen album, I think. It's kind of got the Rainbow Rising Dungeons and Dragons feel to it, this one has. But the track I would have to take off this is the March of the Black Queen. This, Lawyer, and the Prophet Song, I've always said, is Queen's holy trilogy for me. My favourite 3 Queen tracks. So the March of the Black Queen, I'd take off this. I'd take this very much over any other Queen album. It's the most level Queen album. Even A Night at the Opera has got tracks I'm not bothered about. Sweet Lady. Maybe I'd be tempted for Seaside Rendezvous, just, you know, not the seaside, technically. Yeah, Queen 2. So, what I haven't done, to be fair, during this, which I said I would do, is look at the albums that missed out. So I'm going to do that, because then we'll get to the final one. And then there's one honourable mention which I found when searching for the CDs that I completely forgot about and should be on the list, but because I've done the 10, I'm going to leave it off. But if I had time to reconsider, I think it would find its way in. So, Dire Straits' Love Over Gold is one that missed out. This is one I've reviewed on the channel. A very moody album, very progressive moody album. That actually lost out to Chris Ree's Road to Hell, because although Road to Hell's a bit more upbeat in most senses, this has got similar themes. And I think the prog element is covered on Queen 2, Pink Floyd The Wall. So that's why that missed out. Also missing out is Motorhead's Overkill, as I've said. The Police, Synchronicity. That missed out to Rainbow's Down to Earth. And these are going to sound like ridiculous comparisons. The Police, Rainbow, what's that going to do with one another? But this is obviously a pop rock release, I would probably say, with some progressive elements. Something that I think is fairly similar to Down to Earth. So that's why that missed out. Also missing out, not against any album in particular, were these two albums. The Moody Blues, A Question of Balance, which is the Moody Blues album of choice. That's more of a soft, mellow choice, but again, we've got that in some of the country stuff, Carpenters, Neil Diamond, and then some of the prog in Pink Floyd, so I'm okay to miss that out. And I wanted to get some female vocals in here, and I've always liked the Corrs. The Corrs Unplugged, just about missing out. So then we were at a crossroads between two groups that rank amongst my top 5 or 6. And I've already mentioned AC/DC. The other one of those is Kiss. So I was left with a choice between two albums. And I think the Kiss one is fairly obvious. That's Kiss Alive. But the AC/DC one was a bit more complex. We've got the Bon Scott versus Brian Johnson conundrum. Do you take Back in Black? Is Back in Black enough? Do you take one of the Bon Scott albums? Has that got enough for you on it? Do you take one of the Bon Scott live albums? Do you take the Brian Johnson live albums with a bit more material on? Because the Bon Scott album, If You Want Blood, was governed by the vinyl experience. Well, as a matter of fact, for the battle between the two, I have taken If You Want Blood. And the reason for that is that over Kiss, If You Want Blood AC/DC has got more of that toe-tapping feel. AC/DC, painfully for me, compared to Status Quo on occasion. I can see the point, because it's kind of free chords, toe-tapping music. And the track I would pick from this, most definitely, I think I did Queen 2, which was number 9, didn't I? The track I would pick from this is Let There Be Rock. One of the best tracks of all time, performed awesomely, brilliantly here. I read a good magazine article in Classic Rock about this album the other day, so if you can find, the magazine was about If You Want Blood and then Bon Scott's last tour, Highway to Hell tour. That's worth reading. But as much as I like Kiss Alive, it's quite limited in its selection of tracks, obviously from the first 3 albums only. And I was thinking at one point, well, the studio substitute I would have took for this is Destroyer, because it's got Detroit Rock City, God of Thunder, 2 of my favourite tracks, and the more kind of jolly ones, Shout It Out Loud, Do You Love Me, Flaming Youth. But then I thought, no, that doesn't beat this. I need something that I've got very, very hard rock, which Judas Priest isn't particularly toe-tapping, but it's adrenaline pumping. You've got Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous, which is a mix between the two, sort of a halfway house. So that's why I've picked AC/DC, If You Want Blood. So those are the 10 albums. We've gone through 1 to 8, which is a reminder. Number 9 is Queen 2, and number 10 is AC/DC's If You Want Blood. I've gone through the Honourable Mentions, bar 1, and this is quite painful to me, because obviously you can sit there and go through every album and probably make this a lot more tricky than it could be by listing 100 or 200 albums and bringing it down from there. And I was going through the iPod by artist, and this album technically hasn't got an artist against it. And not to prolong the issue, this is why. It's a Jeff Wayne album. And on my iPod it's listed, of course, as a compilation, because you've got some tracks with Richard Burton, Julie Covington, Daily Essex, not the Daily Express, David Essex, Justin Hayward from the Moody Blues, Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy, of course, and Chris Thompson. This should have been in the list, because this would have, again, another cheat really. This would have brought a book along with me in effect, because it's the musical version of the book, the H.G. Wells book. And just one of those albums that, on a desert island, when you're thinking, what the hell am I going to do with my bloody life? It would create those pictures in your head, and without having film or anything else like that, it's a little bit like The Wall in that it isn't just music, it's not just nonsensical, thrashy music. It creates an image in your mind of what's going on. And obviously the inclusion of the brilliant booklet as well with, well, not necessarily the lyrics, but, you know, the great pictures of 1800s England. I mean, you know, this just feels like a film, and it's been tried, the Tom Cruise film and the BBC series and other adaptations, but it's never quite hit as well as this album. Even one of my favourite actors, Liam Neeson, was in the most recent rehash of this album, and no, it just doesn't cut it against the original. Anybody who knows the stuff would probably tell you that this album is fantastic. So I regret that missed out on the list, but hey, I put my 10 in, so that's it. So as a rundown of that list before we get to the end, in the specifics of things, we've got 5 studio albums, 3 live albums and 2 compilations, so a nice split between them there. In the heavy category, we've got 4 albums, 3.5. I think maybe the Rainbow one was kind of the half measure. 3 albums in the progressive category, so that's Pink Floyd, The Wall, Queen 2, and Chris Rea, The Road to Hell, bit of a stretch. And then in the soft section, there's Freesa, Neil Diamond, Hot August Night, Carpenters, Gold, and Glen Campbell's 20 Golden Greats. So from 1 to 10, we've got Pink Floyd, The Wall, Neil Diamond, Hot August Night, with a substitute of either Beautiful Noise or Melody Road. Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous at number 3, with a substitute of Johnny the Fox or Black Rose. Number 4, Judas Priest, Stay in Class. Number 5, Carpenters, Gold, with the substitute of A Song for You. I don't think I said that earlier, as a studio substitute. That's got most of their brilliant songs on. The best kind of singles album from them. Number 6 is Chris Rea's The Road to Hell. Number 7, Rainbow Down to Earth. Number 8, Glen Campbell's 20 Golden Greats. And again, the substitute, which I forgot to mention, is By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Number 9, Queen 2. And number 10, AC/DC If You Want Blood. And as a substitute, either Back in Black or Let There Be Rock. So that's it. That is the first time I've picked up a pen when I've been sat at home for a long time. And if you want to see my handwriting, it's not the best. But it was at 6:10 this morning. And I thoroughly enjoyed doing that. And I thought, well, you know what? I haven't done a video on the channel for a couple of weeks. This seems like the perfect time to talk about it. And of course, there's not enough time to go into depth into each album. But there are some of them. Love Over Gold, Synchronicity, ironically the ones I haven't picked. And A Question of Balance, which I've done reviews for on this channel. In fact, have I reviewed any of them that I have put 1 to 10? That's maybe saying something. No, I haven't. That's ironic, isn't it? Very ironic. But oh well. I've talked about Motorhead, Overkill as well, and that's not on the list. Maybe that's telling me something. But if you've enjoyed this, make sure you leave a like down below. Comment your albums. It's a really tough thing to do unless you've got your mind set on, no, I'm just going to take my top 10 albums. I don't need the variety. I like one type of music, possibly. But like I say, leave a comment with your 10, 5, however many Desert Island albums you want to do. Don't put 50 because that's just stupid. Subscribe for regular music content and film as well. And until the next time, thank you very much for your company. I've been Toby Jones, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.